Versatile.
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 Today, we will visit a part of Canada that has always been very versatile, very flexible. Many changes brought about by new people and new conditions have become part of the lifestyle here. Tour guides, a power station manager, a harbor worker, a native artist, and a museum director give more information and insights. Immigrants from Europe have made Nova Scotia a part of Canada that has gone through many changes. Tour guides at a historic fort explain how versatile these early settlers had to be.
Before the coming of the Europeans, the Mi'kmaq had inhabited this land for over 10,000 years. They were very versatile. They had their own way of life, their own religion, and their own culture. The French were the first to inhabit these lands, too, first Europeans, and they first settled here at Port Royal in 1605. In 1710, the English came in to Nova Scotia, and they renamed this land New Scotland.
What you see here today is a reconstruction of a French settlement that was established back in 1605 by a French nobleman, Pierre de Guassieur de Mont. He had been granted a monopoly on the fur trading rights in the area by the King of France, Henry IV. So what is here now has all been reconstructed by Parks Canada back in 1938-39 and opened in 1940 based on Samuel de Champlain's picture plan, his written descriptions, and also very detailed studies of architecture in Normandy for early 17th century French. Now we're going to go into the blacksmith shop, and the blacksmith was the most highly paid man here at Port Royal. He was getting 150 livres a year, as opposed to the pharmacist Louis Hébert, who was getting 100. He had to be versatile because as well as being the blacksmith, sometimes he would also, when his work was finished, he would also be able to do some hunting and do some gardening and do other things as the governor saw fit. So we're going to gather into the next room now. If you'd like to follow me, we'll go into the kitchen. And this is where all the meals were prepared, so it's very much a commune style of life here at Port Royal. There were two methods of cooking. You can see the open hearth here with the spit, and some meat would be roasted on there. At times, they would also use charcoal and spread it over the stone on the floor and put Dutch ovens in there and cook the meals there as well. Now, again, here in the kitchen, you notice all the copper and iron cooking utensils. These are actual antiques as well that date back to the early 1600s. All the pottery and the pewter has been reproduced. You notice some of the game hanging on the wall. Quite often they would let the animals hang for several days and let them get a bit gamey before serving them and roasting them. We're now entering the community room, and this is where all the men would gather for their meals as well as for meetings. The central dining table here would be where the gentlemen would sit, and on the sides there would be more tables, and the working class like myself would eat on the sides. Now, this is where the Order of Good Cheer would have been held, a social club started by Champlain to try to improve the morale as well as the diet of the men. So during the winter months, they'd take their turns in organizing a big feast for the rest of the company. So somewhat of a competition among the men to see who was the best chef. And this way, it is always in short of good food, and fewer men would die of scurvy. And then by having singing and storytelling and music, it gave the men something to look forward to pass away the long evenings without their families. We're now entering the artisan's workshop. It was a place of work during the day and a place of gathering at night before going upstairs to their sleeping quarters. Now, one interesting feature here is the spring pole lathe that Joël is working on. This is the type of lathe that would have been used here at Port Royal to form legs of chairs or tables or candlesticks. Anything that would be turned here at Port Royal would have been turned in a lathe like this. Now, if you'd like to follow me, we're going to go into the gentlemen's section and see how they would have fared as opposed to the artisans. So please follow me. The room that we're in now was the room of the pharmacist or the apothecary Louis Hébert. So you notice the apothecary chest and jars here on the far side. And most of the remedies are either laxatives to purge the body or diuretics to flush the system out. Now here, you notice the creature comforts, the prie-dieu here on the side, the tall back bench, the settle that was placed in front of the fireplace at night to capture some of the heat radiated by the fire. Notice also that the beds have curtains on them that you could close at night to keep it a bit warmer. And this is a fine room, but I'd like to take you now to the best room of all, the home of the governor, the Sieur de Mont. So if you'd like to follow me, please. We're now going to enter the final room on the tour, the home of the governor, Pierre de Sieur de Mont. And this is the finest home of all. You can see the fine oak paneling on the wall. Over the mantelpiece, you see the coat of arms of the first governor, Pierre de Sieur de Mont, the moon and star, the coat of arms of France, and also the coat of arms of the second governor, the Sieur de Poutrincourt. And as well, the model of the ship, this is the type of ship they would have sailed here at Port Royal, about 20 meters in length. Do other things as the governor saw fit.
As the governor saw fit means that the governor decided that something had to be done.
You notice some of the game hanging on the wall.
Game is not only something you play, like a card game. In this case, game are wild animals that are used for food.
So somewhat of a competition among the men to see who was the best chef.
Watch this word chef. A chef in English is someone who cooks, a cook.
Now here, you notice the creature comforts.
Creature comforts are the things you need to make your life comfortable, to make things nice for you.
Now, the habitation lasted only 8 years, 1605 to 1613. In 1613, it had been attacked and burned down by an English expedition out of Jamestown, Virginia. So I hope that you have been able to appreciate a bit the history of our site, and hope you enjoy your tour while you were here.
New ways to produce energy help Canadians have enough electricity. Find out how a tidal power station is part of a versatile energy system.
My name is Greg Carlin. I'm superintendent for the Annapolis Valley Hydro System. We're located presently at Annapolis Royal, Nova Scotia, Canada, and we're in the site of the Annapolis Tidal Generating Station. This site was built in '84. A little bit of history of the area. In the mid-'70s with the oil crises and the look for alternative energy sources, tidal power was one avenue to pursue renewable energies. As an experimental site, the Bay of Fundy was chosen because of its higher tides than most areas. In this area here, the tides range approximately 10 meters from high to low, and the tides run 24 hours and 50-minute day, in which there's 2 high tides and 2 low tides. So as the tide comes in, we open 2 sluice gates and fill the head pond to our maximum limit. And in getting there, we have to take things into account, such as our fishways, as well as our inflows from rain, rivers, streams, etc., that are in our watershed. Once the head pond has reached its preset level, we close the gates and we sit and wait until the tide begins to go back out. And at a point when we have about 1.5 meters of head across the unit, that means that the inland side is 1.5 meters higher than the seaside. We open our wicket gates that are on the inlet of the turbine. That allows the water to get into the turbine. We bring the turbine to speed, synchronize with the grid. Once we're attached to the grid, we go to 100% and begin generating out into the province. That cycle lasts about 5.5 hours, and during that time, the outgoing tide recedes to its full ebb and begins to come back in. Since we are tied to the moon and the tides, in order to be more versatile, we use our conventional hydro units along in the system to top up power demands while we are in a fill situation. What you have behind me here is the control room and some of the gauges and metering equipment that the operators use to determine or troubleshoot or watch the machinery. The generator itself would power approximately 4,000 homes. So as the tide comes in, we open 2 sluice gates.
Sluice gates are parts of the machinery which are open and closed to control the water flow.
To top up power demands.
When you've started to fill something and add to it, you top something up, you complete it.
Some of the gauges.
Look at the word gauge. It has an interesting spelling. It's a measuring instrument. You also have these in your car, for example.
That the operators use to determine or troubleshoot.
You often hear about troubleshooters also in business. These are people who try to find and correct faults. The goods being imported and exported in Canada make life at a harbor a workplace that must be versatile. Find out how a longshoreman does the many things needed for transport by ship.
Hi, I'm Sherman Pace. You're in the Port of Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm a longshoreman. I load and unload ships and rail cars to get ready for the ships. We're versatile. To get ready for the ship, we have to take the cargo off the trucks, to come in on the trucks and the rail, and we stockpile them. And after you stockpile them, you put each ships in each position, in each section, and then you go, and when the ship comes in, you're all ready for the loaded. So you load it, and it's in and out of the port within 10 hours. And you have gypsum that you have to store in the shade, the rain. You have to have space for everything. And with our containers, we have storage space for the store the containers when they come in, the empties. And the full ones, you have to take them off the rail and put them back onto the pier and have them ready for when the ship comes. For a certain weight on each ship, you have to be stowed the proper way. And you have to have the checkers to check everything off. You have your crane operators, you have your brute drivers, your front-end loader drivers. And it's all just one big happy family. You got to work together in order to produce. To become a longshoreman, you have to learn how to drive equipment. You got to be interested in the docks and know what's going on, and the loading ships and the CN rail and the trucks, everything that involves the shipping industry. And once you get all that together, it takes a few years before you become familiar with it all. And then everything, the pattern falls in right, and you just have to come in, you drive your front end, you drive your brute, whatever you're destinated to drive. And if you're a ship's crane operator, you got to go up, then you lift the container off the brute, and you lift it up, and you carry it over and place it on the ship. And then you come back, and then if you got to dump the ship, you got to bring one off and put it on the brute. The brute takes it from the crane, takes it to the CN rail, and then you have a machine there to load it onto the rail car for to go to the port, to go wherever the destination is. And then it reverses coming back in. You have to empty the shunts and stockpile them. They have everything ready for the ship when it comes in, so you don't delay the ship. 12 hours, you can pretty well turn the ship around. It all depends on how many cranes. You put 2 cranes on it or 4 cranes. And it all depends on how many containers it has. If, let's say, we average 25 to 30. Sometimes you're down to 18 an hour. Sometimes you get 40 an hour. It all depends on how the ship is. Sometimes the locks onto them, when you put the container onto the ship, and you lock them, the locks are not working properly, so there's a little delay there, and then you have the lashers got to go up with their poles to unlock them. And we stockpile them.
When something is stockpiled, it is collected and kept for future use. In this case, it's the containers in the harbor.
I've been in the union 43 years. I worked at Halterm here for 25 years. Long time.
The Native Americans have a long history, but today they must be versatile in Canada's modern society. An artist explains how he lives in both worlds.
My name is Alan Sullaboy, and I'm a Mi'kmaq artist from Truro, Nova Scotia, and it's 1 hour from here. And I live on the Millbrook Reservation, and that's where I was born, and I'm still there. My whole life revolves around my culture, and I like to think that my work will bring the ancient designs, the symbols forward and keep them current. They're part of what I am today. I'm not trying to replicate the past or trying to be someone that lived 100 years ago. The reality is that I'm a modern Mi'kmaq in this modern time. But I never forget my roots and where I come from. And so it's extremely important that these symbols are preserved, and that even ourselves as Mi'kmaq people get to see what our own designs, our ancestors did, and understand the work, what it entails, and the purpose of it. From the time I was going to school to this time, I think life has changed a lot as far as Mi'kmaqs go, in that we're more visible. Before I went to school, I spoke no English at all. I spoke Mi'kmaq, my language, but assimilation was forced on us. We had to start talking English, and it was that you couldn't do well in school if in Mi'kmaq your language held you back if you didn't speak good English, and that's how it was sort of given to us, and that's how it went. But in that process, I think we've sort of got lost too. We've lost our identity and who we are, and I think also that was damaging to us, and we're trying to regain that. And we are searching for our identity, and I think that's sort of a lifelong process, and I think you have to know who you are to find your footing in this world. I think that's why I was put here as an artist, to tell a story of my people, and I think that, you know, it's good for all of us. I'm sure in the old days there were people that followed that had a role such as mine or a similar role, and I think that I'm a modern version of something that probably was always part of my people. I think in this modern world, Mi'kmaq today have to be a versatile people, and I think that they have to learn to cope with the modern world and get out there and learn to be doctors and lawyers and learn some untraditional things. But I think that, you know, being a traditionalist, I think helps you in that it makes you understand who you are and where you came from, but then, you know, it's a part of you, but you look forward to the future and making your way, making a living in this world. Life has changed a lot as far as Mi'kmaqs go.
This is a term that shows the relationship between two different things, shows a reference. The fishing industry has gone through many changes in the past 2 centuries. Listen to the story of how versatile fishermen have worked to develop their livelihood.
My name is Ralph Getson. I'm the Curator of Education at the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. We're now up on the 2nd level of the museum, and as you can imagine from our name, we tell the story of the fishing on the east coast of Atlantic Canada. For 500 years they've been fishing on this coast, and the fish that they've been after has been the cod. Cod is the most important fish in the days before refrigeration. When it's caught and cleaned, it can be salted and dried, and you have a product that will last for a long period of time. It was a very important source of protein for the poor of Europe, for the armies of Europe, and when we have settlement in the New World, for colonies in the West Indies and South America. Codfish, known as the beef of the sea. In Nova Scotia, we call it the bread of the sea. And Lunenburg has been involved in the fishery for a long period of time. The town settled in 1753 by foreign Protestants, people who were farmers, peasants, tradesmen. But when they got to the New World, found that farming was very poor here. A lot of stones. It's all right if you're farming granite, but not very good soil. So they were versatile enough in that they could turn to the fishery. And they started very early on to the nearshore banks, and beginning in 1873 to the Grand Banks off of Newfoundland. Fishing in boats like I'm sitting on right now, a dory, fishing with long lines, up to 2.5 miles of line with baited hooks at 3-foot intervals, and they were fishing for cod. And the town really grew from the period when they began to fish the Grand Banks in the 1870s. In the 1880s and 90s was the heyday for the fishery. A lot of fortunes coming in through from the fishery meant that the town could grow. And in 1888, the town incorporated. And they were involved in that salt fishery right down until the time of the Second World War in schooners, in fishing schooners like the Blue Nose. After the war, they started the modern fishery, fishing with large nets and bringing the fish in and selling it fresh. Instead of packing it in salt, they packed it in ice. And that really was the beginning of the modern fishery. Many changes took place in the 1950s and 60s. New equipment, they went into cooked fish, fish sticks from this, in this building here in the 1950s. This is one of the salted codfish here. That's what, that was money to Lunenburgers years ago. This solar cod spread out to dry on the flakes. 2 to 3 weeks of drying in the sun, looking after it to make sure that it didn't sunburn on days when it was very hot, turning its skin side to the sun so that the flesh wouldn't sunburn. And when you had it, that you could pick it up by its tail, you were ready to send it to market. The market for the Lunenburg cod was the West Indies and South America. Take saltfish down and return with a cargo of solar salt from Turks Island. So that was a very important commodity here in this port down until the 1930s. And then the advent of fresh fishing, of course, changed the way we fish and the way we treated the fish as well. In the 1880s and 90s was the heyday for the fishery.
The heyday is the time when something has the most excitement and has the most success.
So that was a very important commodity here.
Commodities are products which are traded between countries, agricultural and other products.